Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. There's condemnation from the opposition over the government's handling of fires at the Riverton City dump. This comes as the opposition says plans were put in place for tires to be transferred from Riverton City to a tire disposal site in St. Catherine. TVJ's O'Shane Masters has details.
Unfortunately, it seems that this government were tardy in removing these tires.
The issue of the removal of tires from the Riverton dump has once again come to the fore as residents of a number of communities surrounding Riverton were forced to leave early Sunday morning after fire broke out near the garbage disposal site. The source of contention, the burning of tires. It's why the opposition spokesman on community development, Noel Arscott, has come out to chastise the National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, and the Holness-led government over the handling of tires at the site. Speaking to TVJ News, Mr. Arscott questioned why the plans which were instituted by the PNP government has not been adhered to or continued.
We had set up a tire disposal site in St. Catherine, so all tires should have been removed to that facility.
But Executive Director of the NSWMA, Audley Gordon, has labelled that plan by the then PNP administration as a knee-jerk reaction to the Riverton fire of 2015.
I call it a knee-jerk reaction because all it does was to move the problem from one part of Jamaica to another part of Jamaica. That's hardly something that would be tenable.
The NSWMA head also pointed out that the future of the Hill Run disposal site, which was identified by the People's National Party, is at an end.
We have taken a hard look at the Hill Run arrangement, and we have decided to close out that facility. It was a bad decision. We need a more comprehensive look at how we treat with tires. For example, should the dealers of tires be asked to play a part in the retrieval of used tires?
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, communities affected by air pollution caused by the fire at Riverton City are urged to join forces with the Jamaica Environment Trust JET to initiate legal action. CEO of JET, Susan Stanley, says legal action is being considered as the Constitution provides for a healthy environment to all citizens.
We seek other parties that are the parties that are affected by Riverton to contact us. JET has always maintained the position that we will stand with you, but you have to come with us. So we need the community. We need the community associations. You've just let us know that there's a Corville Gardens Community Association. I'm sure there are other community associations. We need the people who are impacted to join us. Action is to be taken.
The People's National Party PNP has filed a lawsuit in the Supreme Court against the National Identification and Registration Act. It was filed this morning. The PNP says a section of the act are in breach of the rights of Jamaicans. Speaking at a media briefing, PNP President Dr. Peter Phillips said the party is seeking an order that sections of the legislation be deemed null and void and be struck down. The Chief Executive Officer of the Firearm Licensing Authority FLA has a warning to justices of the peace who write recommendations under duress for applicants of licensed firearms. Shane Danning says while the agency understands the plight of JPs, the practice could have serious consequences if firearms end up in the possession of questionable characters. He acknowledged that some JPs have found ways to correct this wrong.
So justices of the peace have in the past called us to say, while I signed the recommendation, I'm asking you to ignore it. Justices of the peace have written under confidential cover to say that I recommended this person, but please ignore it. And we do understand the reality of the circumstances from time to time. We are all human beings, and we live in the reality of the circumstances that surround us.
Mr. Danning says as part of a more stringent process, the FLA will require firearm applicants to do a literacy test. In June last year, he said the FLA would again begin to administer the literacy tests. It was part of an overall process of reorganization for the FLA to ensure that licensed firearm holders are fit and proper.
It's not literacy in terms of you only understanding to read and write, but literacy on the knowledge of firearm.
He was addressing a LA Magistrates Association meeting in Mandeville recently. Agriculture Minister Audley Shaw is encouraging private property owners with unoccupied space to lease it to farmers. He noted that most Jamaicans are interested in farming, but the availability of land is an issue.
Private lands that are idle. We're going to invite all of the owners of private lands that are idle and arable. Lease it. We're going to invite them to lease it. Land use policy is something that's going to undergo careful review by this government because we cannot afford to have idle lands across this country.
Mr. Shaw added that large companies are also seeking land to expand production.
CB, I toured their place at Hill Run in St. Catherine. They're growing sweet corn. They're growing peanuts. They're growing onions. They're growing Scotch bonnet peppers. Their next stage now from that 400 acres, they have now applied for 2,000 acres.
And the Agriculture Minister is seeking to boost Jamaica's economy through medical marijuana. He says research shows that ganja is a healthy alternative. Mr. Shaw was speaking at a recent tour of a packaging plant in St. Elizabeth. The discovery, he said, has opened doors for Jamaica to develop and meet the demand for the product.
Governors of states, senators of the United States are calling upon President Donald Trump to free up the medical cannabis industry. Canada is way ahead, and Canada is now looking to Jamaica for that. So cannabis is part of the future for Jamaica. We have the purity of it that is unique to Jamaica, 94% purity when they test the oils here. In California, it's about 70% purity. So these are God-given gifts to us, and we all have a duty and a responsibility, and the government must lead the way so that we can really create wealth for the people of Jamaica, or give the people the opportunity to create the wealth for themselves.
Several residents in Westmoreland had to evacuate their homes after heavy rains caused severe flooding in their communities. For the latest, we join our reporter Kalisha Williams, who is in Westmoreland. Kalisha?
First I did not know lands in the entire Little London division, but now that the water is actually receding, residents are suffering major headaches in terms of cleanup exercises. One particular suffered major losses to his livestock. Also, interestingly, the Member of Parliament for the area, Dr. Wickham McNeil, was also in the area touring some of the houses affected by the floodwaters, but residents didn't hesitate to accost him. We'll provide more updates as we continue traveling to the community to see what exactly is happening. But until then,
That was our reporter Kalisha Williams giving us an update on what was happening in Westmoreland, and we'll sure have more details on that story later in primetime news this evening. Residents in the Ginger Hill community of St. Elizabeth are having problems accessing their communities following a landslide on the Maybole Road. The landslide has reduced the roadway to single-lane traffic. The breakaway has caused some discomfort to farmers who will have problems transporting their produce. The residents say from Sunday, a light pole has been dislocated with wires hanging across the road. And in news overseas, the White House is set to announce a decision with major national security implications. This as U.S. President Donald Trump will say whether the U.S. will remain in the Iran nuclear deal. For the details, we join the CNN.
President Trump has reportedly made up his mind on the Iran deal. An announcement is scheduled for Tuesday afternoon.
History has shown that the longer we ignore a threat, the more dangerous that threat becomes.
The president was considering whether to continue waiving sanctions on Iran's energy and banking sectors. In exchange, Iran slowed its nuclear program. Mr. Trump and his supporters, and also Israel, have been widely critical of the deal.
What do you think is going to happen to that agreement? That nuclear agreement?
But others think pulling out of the accord could lead to future problems.
I think it's going to drive a wedge between us and our allies, and it's only going to accelerate the possibility of Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is in compliance with the deal, and a number of allies, including Germany and France, have tried to convince President Trump to stay on board. Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif mocked President Trump for his stance on the matter, saying in a tweet, "President Trump is jumping on a rehash of old allegations already dealt with by the IAEA to nix the deal. How convenient." Iranian officials also say they will not renegotiate the deal that's currently in place.
And in sports, her times may not be impressive at the moment, but 2008 Olympic 100-meter silver medalist Sharon Simpson says she is using this season as a rebuilding one as she targets to return to the elite competition for the 2019 World Championships in Doha. Details in this report.
Simpson is continuing her comeback after giving birth to her first child a couple of years ago. The 33-year-old, who is expected to feature over 200 meters at the Jamaica International Invitational Meet on May 19, continued her preparation by running the half-lap event at the first J3A All-Comers Meet at the weekend. She clocked 23.46 seconds for third in that race.
I'm just happy to run, to be able to be in the meet at the Jamaica Invitational. And it's always good running in Jamaica, running in front of my people. So I'm looking forward to competing. I don't have a time in mind, but I know that with my training and, Coach will get me ready to really, run well at the Invitational meet.
The 33-year-old Olympic silver medalist says despite only returning to competitive action earlier this year, she is expecting to improve enough over the next year in order to compete at the 2019 World Championships in Doha.
I just want to compete as much as possible this year, and I know with me competing this year, going into next year, it will be much better when I start, training for the 2019 World Championships.
Simpson's longtime national teammate and former training partner, double Olympic gold medalist Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, also made a return to competitive action after giving birth. The national record holder ran 11.52 seconds to win the 100 meters in her first competitive race since 2016 at the first all-comers meet at the National Stadium on Saturday. The Jamaica International Invitational takes place on May 19 at the National Stadium, with live coverage on TVJ, TVJSN, and OneSpotMedia.com.
And of course, live coverage of the Jamaica International Invitational can also be heard on Hits 92 FM. And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.